Пошлите наверх.
Renardo had been searching for a way to save the rebellion. Lapina wanted to capture and interrogate Zenobia. But if he could show her proof of her father's madness, maybe she would join the rebellion.
These platforms were great. Renardo wanted one for his house.
Что они чаще стрелять, по-моему, стали. Ну как бы не стали, так и есть. Нифига себе. Зафигарили.
Now you smell even worse.
Блин, бомбы разрушили. Блин. Да, сейчас чаще энергию дают, чем здоровье. Так и есть, разрушено опять.
The Observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists and black feathers everywhere. The Ravens had taken care to burn the reanimated witness to cinders. Zenobia stared around, shocked. The scientists had been neutral. They had no part in the rebellion. "Take me to your council," she said, shaken. "I have things to tell them." It was what Renardo had gambled on. The Zenobia would turn against her father once she knew his madness. But the rebel base was secret. Could he really risk taking the Emperor's daughter there, even if she did love him?
Действительно ли он убедил ее, или она играла на? Давайте на секретную базу.
By far speaker Toad, the one creature the Ravens had left alive at the Observatory. Lapino seemed awfully anxious to meet him at the secret base. If he was a spy for the Empire, he'd turn around and reveal the coordinates to the Empire, jeopardizing the entire rebellion. But Renardo couldn't bear to think that Lapino would commit such horrible treachery. There was still good in the Mad Rabbit. He felt sure of it.
I'll meet up with you at the base,
Lapino said through the Toad. Good thinking. Renardo gave him the coordinates. There's a shuttle here I can borrow. Renardo found Zenobia in the chart room. "I've been having awful dreams," she said. "Dead kittens and worse. I thought they were only dreams, you know. Why would anyone want the lost gods back? In those days, the favorite of a god could become immortal." She held herself and shivered. "He wants to become an eater of souls." Well, I'm not afraid of dying. Just dying of boredom. Renardo said, but she didn't laugh. Silence fell as they flew towards the ruins of the city of Ubar, where the rebellion leadership was hiding. If Zenobia couldn't help them fight off her father, no one could.
Блин, я не знал, что кролик-то сунется. Получается, я сдал опять базу. Опять не будет счастливого конца.
As they touched the ground, he could smell the ravens and hear their hungry caws in the distance. They're probably looking for me, she said. You go on ahead. She had that fiery look in her eyes that he'd always loved. It was a bit odd, though. How easy she'd been to convince. It was what he'd gambled on, but he'd expected more of an argument. She'd always loved to argue. She considered it the fastest way to the truth. Maybe she'd long suspected the truth. Sometimes all it took was taking the bandages from your eyes. That must be it, he told himself. He was practically sure he'd find something useful in one of these things.
Сначала сюда за сундуком. А в сундучке то, что нам надо. Так. Давайте вот этот качнем.
He was more and more extraordinary.
Офигенная вещь. Тем более, когда она начнет действовать на комбо ниже 20, ну, от 20, это будет вообще шоколадно.
They caught their breath under a ruined arch. It's beautiful, she said. This was the library of Ubar, he said. Your father's ravens thought they had an ancient book. She nodded. Was she crying? This was exactly what I wanted, Renardo thought. To turn her to our cause. So, why do I feel something is terribly wrong? Because nothing ever goes this smoothly, is why.
Блин, назад вернуться не могу. Плохо. Ну ладно, что теперь делать?
Anyone ever tell you have a lovely eye? No?
Как-то так. Рычажок. У-у-у. У-у-у. Брысь. Блин. Так. О, вообще хорошо получилось.
See? With enough leverage, you could go anywhere.
Что-то я не помню, это лестница.
Along the stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good.
Блин. пойду я туда. А вон еще дверка.
Had that door been opened before?
Ладно, здесь все собрали.
The council toads swarmed around Zenobia, shocked she was there, shocked she had changed sides. Then the walls exploded. He heard toads croaking, "Oh, the ravens!" Blackbirds were pouring through holes everywhere. "It's a trap!" cried the council speaker. In the confusion, he saw flashes of magic. Then Zenobia being hustled off by Imperial troops. So, she had betrayed him after all. Renardo ran for his ship. The Farfarer flew into the clouds, barely losing the Imperial ravens pursuing him. The rebellion was lost, and he had lost it. There was nothing to do but find Zenobia and make her pay for her treachery. His heart ached. He still loved her. But he had trusted her, and he had been a fool. She would be back at the fleet, gloating with her mad, bloodthirsty father. For all Renardo knew, she was helping him bring back the old, lost gods back from their exile.
Ты не знал, что предатель-то кролик. Блин, а был ложный адрес дать. Я ж не знал, что кролик вылезет. Хитро, хитро.
Renardo landed in the middle of the Imperial fleet. The rebels were losing badly. Without leadership, it was a slaughter. Renardo felt strangely free, trying not to think about how he had lost the war. Trying not to think about how he had loved Zenobia, blinded himself to her treachery. That's what it meant to be a hero. To keep on fighting after the most bitter of betrayals. To never know if you could trust anyone. Cats. What a waste of fur. Wow. The sword felt even colder.
За убийство противника получает 5 энергии меча, повышает сопротивление физическому урону под удар щитоносы. Так, это что такое? Не, оставляем все как есть. А, пойдемте здесь.
Right into the middle of the fleet. It was a glaring weakness in the defense.
Ну, там нету, что ли, никого? Бля, я рвусь, стою.
This was definitely better than pulling yourself up in a bucket.
Что-то уж больно шустро стало получаться. Неплохо героя прокачал. Блин. Давайте сожжем всех нафиг.
What had happened to Lupino? Had the Mad Rabbit fled to safety? Or was he forlornly carrying on like the few rebels Renardo could see here or there? It didn't matter anymore. All there was slash and spin, parry and lunge, over and over as he fought his way across the fleet. All there was finding the girl he'd once loved, who had used his love against him and putting as big a hole in her heart as she'd left in his.
Да не она это.
What was
Колебался.
really fun was hooking yourself onto a moving ship.
Блин. Накосячил. За этими взрывами не увидел. Как поджег себя. Который раз я сюда уже прихожу. Приколюха полная. С одного удара. Вот так. Вот это было мясорубка ща.
And suddenly, Zenobia was there, advancing a Lupino. So the Mad Rabbit had survived. "Save me, or I'm done for!" screamed Lupino. Zenobia turned, showing her teeth in a smile. "You're alive!" Renardo ran towards the witch. "Lupino's the one who betrayed you!" she shouted. "He warned my father!" Before he could think, Renardo sank his sword into the
Бля.
sorceress. She stared at him, heartbroken. "No! Lupino's the traitor!" Renardo had an awful, sinking feeling in his stomach. Then, he felt a knife in his back. "I'm afraid she's right," said the Mad Rabbit. "Ain't I a stinker?" Then, the sun went out. Damn it! And he hadn't learned anything new this time. He'd done the same thing twice, yet expected a different outcome. There would be a way to win. Renardo could feel it. He'd have to explore choices he'd never made before he could figure it all out, though. And with that, the book's pages fluttered to the beginning once again. And he fell. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Emperor. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renardo had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renardo really leave an old friend to the Ravens?
Прикольно, ключики какие-то появились. Так, давайте попробуем вариант с камнем.
Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces. What could have brought them to light? This Emperor, Isengrim III, had once been kind, but he'd gone mad. And now he was conducting secret, obscene rituals to bring back the lost gods. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the earth? It was more than Renardo could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Renardo couldn't help feeling a bit curious. Was Lapino still waiting to be rescued? No. He was probably drinking champagne with the ravens. Did ravens drink champagne? Did rabbits? Renardo felt oddly thirsty, come to think of it. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? Renardo never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it?
Сюда я так и не сходил даже в прошлый раз. Ну, тоже просто сундук.
With all this ore, Renardo could forge a really great sword. He was a master forger. That probably wasn't the right word. Who are you looking at? Oh, right. No one.
Никого, никого. У нас вот дверка есть теперь. Как-то так.
Renardo was running out of choices. Zenobia's love brought him only sorrow. His best friend was his enemy. And the Iblis stone... Ooh, he shuddered. Best not to think about it. All that was left was the Sky Ripper. A weapon powered by a god's eye.
Это мы тоже читали уже.
So be it, then. That is a very cool sword, thought Renardo. No, seriously. He couldn't feel his paw anymore.
Сундучок.
A gem of power. You didn't find those every day.
Что нам дает крушитель? Интересно. Разных уровней. Я как бы понимаю, для чего он нужен.
Hey, I got this friend who's a swan. Can he join up? He dyes his feathers.
Фига себе, с первого раза
See?
угадал.
That wasn't so hard. There it was. Skyripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway. The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist, but first, he'd get the second piece. Skyripper had a heart, a core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him.
Не, мы в прошлый раз отдали ей камушек.
It was a no-brainer. He'd sacrificed his old friend Lapino to get the armature. And the armature was useless by itself, only a series of coils and wheels. War demanded sacrifices, and he would make more before the end. He would have to choose the greatest good no matter how much it cost him. Zenobia. Well, he would see her sooner or later, across a battlefield or a sword's point before all this was over. He was sure of that. The power was in the core. Obviously, he had to get the core.
Да, ядрышко надо найти.
He looked up at the old trees around him. They were so big and so old. They'd been there before he was born, and they'd be there after he'd passed into legend. Was he confronting his own unimportance? What had got into him? He was no philosopher. Anyway, who cares? He was plenty important. He was a hero, and soon he'd prove it.
Да, докажет.